No heo, ki te tau tōku whaia, ngā ngaro te hiki te maunga, waihua te awa, kahangunu te iwi, kura hika kaua te hapū, waihua te marae, ki tēnei taha hoki, ki ngā maunga o te whenua kotimana, ki raro o te korowai o te Gordon Tartan me Clan McGregor, ki te tau tōku matua, no te whenua tiamana ia ko Ngāti Pākehā tōna iwi ko Tipene Pickett tōku ingoa. The fruitful waters is my river, the waves of Te Huki is the mountain that I belong to, my tribe is Ngāti Kahangunu, my sub-tribe is Kura Hikakawa, I'm also from the Highlands of Scotland and from Germany, and I've been practicing motivational interviewing since 2002 as a practitioner, and since 2010 as a trainer of trainers, and did my formal trainer of trainers in 2013, and have been both practicing and training motivational interviewing since 2013. Well, I think the first thing is we're not expecting teachers to be counsellors. MI itself is a particular style of conversation about change and growth, and a definition I really like is helping other people talk themselves into change. If you're a teacher and you're listening to a student talk about change, there's particular language that they use that, when reflected back, can help students talk more about change. And some of the most effective things teachers can do is to sort of sit on their hands and not give unasked for advice, but actually give the students the space themselves to come up with their own answers because they have that knowledge. What defines motivational interviewing different from other modalities is it's a way of being. And so Bill and Steve looked a lot at what are the values, what are the beliefs that we in our way of being need to embrace in order to have really effective conversations for change. And the other is tuning one's ears into the language of change. But the spirit made all the difference. So the idea of partnership, they're the expert on their lives. You might have some knowledge and expertise which can help. And you form a collaboration to discuss, where that conversation or that element of change. The ability to listen to understand, offer more statements of understanding. Well, it sounds like you've got some really good reasons not to change, you've got some really good reasons to change, is a wonderful reflection of a person's dilemma without necessarily going straight to the fix-it mode or listening to give advice. Seeing another person in their uniqueness, that they have absolute worth. They've got mana that's unique. They're a unique individual, that they they have a special impact on this world because of their uniqueness, and that mana has its own unique influence. Being able to see the strengths that they have. There's a difference between affirming a student by saying, wow, you've got a lot of strength, to you've got a lot of strength when you stood up for your friend, knowing that you could be hurt. That small difference of adding a behaviour to the value that you notice, having people be more skilled in that area is really helpful and gives students a boost in confidence. And lastly, the idea of, at any point you get, reinforcing their sense of tino rangatiratanga and their own autonomy. So autonomy support language like, this has got to be your decision. Your thoughts matter here, as you're the one that's going to be choosing what fits best for you. So that element of having a sense is what MI calls acceptance. There's absolute worth, affirmation, autonomy, and accurate empathy go to make that up. The biggest thing is that not have expectations that they have to solve the problem. We're not expecting them to be counsellors, but there are some things that they can do that can be really helpful, because our communication style has a profound impact on whether they're going to have a successful process of change or not. And so I think bang for buck, something that would be really helpful for teachers is they're often in a place where they could easily give a lot of unasked for advice. So a process like asking a student if they're talking about something they want to change is ask them what they know about some of the solutions before you start giving advice. If you've got some advice, ask permission. Would it be okay if I give you some information about this or some ways that other people have tried, and then ask later, just listen to understand, and then ask them later, now that you've got that information, how have things changed for you with this dilemma that you've got? They call it ask, offer, ask, and the key to giving information is first ask what they know. It then emphasises their tino rangatiratanga and that they have knowledge already, and avoids instances that you're going to repeat what they already know. Asking permission to provide that information, that emphasises their autonomy. They can say no. And so that builds their sense of agency. As a youth, they've often got dilemmas that they're in two minds about. They've got good reasons not to change, good reasons to change. And what motivational interviewing can do is help them resolve that ambivalence, and strengthen their commitment for change. And so what that also does is maybe also shifts them from feeling pressured to change. Part of MI can help them feeling, everyone, this is other people's agenda that want me to change. And MI can actually shift them to moving, well, maybe this change has some value for me, and it moves from external pressure to internal desire. And so they sort of start to, once again, feel a greater sense of agency and tino rangatiratanga. And I think MI is brilliant for that. I really like the words of a kaumātua matua Pat Ruka. He was from Ngāpuhi, when I asked him about tikanga and motivational interviewing. And his answer was, well, tikanga has its own whakapapa, its genealogy, it has its own mana, its own influence in that space of healing. MI, I'm sure, has its own whakapapa and has its own mana, and just allow each to sit in their own mana. And what he was meaning by that is both have a role to play. So, for example, we have wonderful processes of engagement, the pōwhiri, the whakatau process in Māori. And that's the first part of MI, is the process of engagement. So integrating sort of a Māori process of engagement, where, you're taking care of the unseen with karakia, creating a space of safety. You're acknowledging through mihi their whakapapa, their uniqueness, and the kaupapa, and then also sort of whanaungatanga, where you share something of yourself so that they've got an idea of the container they're going to place that trust in. And it's not just a one-way, I would expect you to share everything about you and me not share anything about me. So those processes that we have of the pōwhiri, and moving from a state of tapu, of constriction, unknown, unsafe, to maybe noa and more known and greater safety, is a wonderful process that you can use as part of engagement, which is common to all modalities, but is also the foundation process for MI. What makes it unique is the focus on the language of change. Certain language predicts change, and tuning one's ears into the language of change can shift a conversation from people feeling like they're pressured to change to feeling like they've got some internal desire to change. So it's the difference from changing because other people are telling me to, or they're feeling like they've been guiltified into the process, to going, well, actually, maybe there's something in this for me. And there's certain language that appears. And, youth have got big decisions that they're making in their life, of which they can be ambivalent about. So listening to language like I'd like or I want can indicate that there might be a change goal that they're wanting to achieve. And they might indicate the ability, I think I can, or I think I could, if I started this, I'd be able to make this change. Or another one might be a reason, I think I should change because, and so they'll give some reason. And lastly, it might be sort of desire ramped up, need. They'll say things, look, I've got to, I must, I have to do something about this, whatever this is. And then as they talk more about that, the language of starts to shift. the more they talk about this change, and it starts to move towards willingness language and commitment language. And so it moves into language like, I'm considering, or I'm feeling ready to do something about this, or I'm willing to give this a go. And even stronger again, I will be doing something about this. That language is highly predictive of change. And the more you hear that, the more people step into that change. So if teachers are tuning themselves into the language that predicts change, they can have a conversation that can help shift one of those students or youth towards sort of a positive change outcome. We're not expecting teachers or any adults who are working with students who aren't already counsellors to be in a role of counselling. However, there's some things about motivational interviewing and the style of communication it has and the way that you position yourself in relation to that youth that can make a profound outcome. And they've done a lot of studies, but one of the top things is listening to understand. So that's part of acceptance. When people feel you offer saying, wow, it sounds like this is really hard for you, or God, you had a lot of strength and you really pushed through that. That sort of reflective statement, trying to understand that person, is when people hear that, they feel more accepted. They feel more accepted too, and particularly youth who often don't have agency, to hear language like, and this decision's yours. What you say here and what your perspective matters. That sort of language is really important to use with our youth, because it gives them a sense that they hold mana and they have agency in this world. And so MI sort of has a particular focus on using autonomy support language, believing that given there's a power differential often between the adults and the youth, that idea of partnership, acknowledging they're the experts in their life and they've got their own life experience. It might not be as extensive as yours, however, they've got their own inner guidance system that works for them. And you might have some knowledge which would be helpful, affirming their strengths, noticing enduring qualities that they have that, for example, determination or resilience or courage, and attaching a behaviour. You took a lot of courage for you to stand up for your friend when you could have come under fire too. Those sorts of affirmations help build a youth's sense of belief in themselves. I think what could be most helpful, being introduced into a classroom where you've got students who are maybe thinking about change, would be one, to listen to understand. That you're going to offer a statement of understanding. Well, it sounds like you've got good reasons not to, you've got good reasons to change, rather than leaping into advice, I think is so sitting on that sort of desire to fix. So taking the pressure off yourself to feel like you've got to solve the problem is really helpful. So a lot of these for teachers, when they're under the pump and they feel like they don't have a lot of time, and if they've got a child who's come, or a youth that's come to them, who's chosen them to have a conversation, then also being really present for that person. And something they know that has an impact is how congruent you are. And when you're a teacher in another health professions or education, you often feel like you're under the pump, that you've got a lot to do. And so there was a quote that Steve Rolnick gave once, which was, if you behave like you've got 15 minutes, it might take all day. If you behave like you've got all day, it might take 15 minutes. And what can you do before you respond to that child that can put you in that space of, I've got all day for you? Maybe it's just taking a breath. Maybe it's just saying to that child, let's go grab a cuppa, whatever that might be, to give yourself that space to consciously shift into that, I've got all day for you. And just that little shift inside will have a really big change on the outcome. I guess the million-dollar question is, how do you get better at reflective listening? And there is only one way, and that is to practice and then have somebody evaluate your work. Either they observe you or you record that and they code it. They code how many reflections you give, for example, to how many questions that you ask. And in motivational interviewing, we would go for 1 question to 1 reflection is okay. If you can get 2 reflections to 1 question, you're moving much more towards the sense and strengthening accurate empathy, where people feel really heard, and then you're now listening to understand, not listening to solve. The only way to do that is to get feedback. It's the only way.